Look at the tricolor red, white, and blue flag still hanging proudly from the wooden front porch. Look closely at the scorched remnants of cardboard firework casings not yet swept from the gravel walkway. And you will recognize a cultural truth about America that is both deeply hilarious and profoundly bizarre. Right after the night of July 4th, when an entire global superpower has just gone completely hoarse, singing patriotic anthems, deeply immersed in a great sense of national pride and historical triumph, the morning of July 5th wakes up in a sudden way that no living soul could predict. The whole country abruptly sheds the solemn, majestic armor of Independence Day to immediately dive headfirst into a lawless, chaotic sugar rush, celebrating a tiny folded pocket pastry called National Apple Turnover Day. This cultural transition is so incredibly abrupt and violently contrasting that it makes any serious observer or sociologist question the very fabric of the American psyche, wondering what drives this wild shift. Why would a nation that just spent 24 hours celebrating the bloody birth of capitalist freedom and constitutional liberty immediately dedicate the next 24 hours to venerating a simple piece of baked dough wrapped around spiced fruit? The true answer does not lie in the glass display cases of bakeries, but is deeply hidden in the dark, forgotten corners of history, full of random, chaotic mishaps, massive military crises, and a grueling centuries-long survival campaign that 99% of the population today, walking the streets right now, is completely, totally clueless about as they enjoy their modern morning. The very existence of this July 5th holiday is an ironic, brilliant trap of human history. If you look back at the ancient, dust-covered culinary records of old Western Europe long ago, this folded pastry was absolutely not the intentional invention of a mastermind culinary chef wanting to create a new artistic wave in gastronomy, but rather the desperate brainchild of sheer destitution and utter terror. Its historical journey began in the year 1630 inside the thick, fortified, freezing stone walls of St. Donat's Castle, located in the damp, rainy, and completely unforgiving landscape of historical Wales. At that exact time, the entire European continent was being violently choked by a brutal arms race. Mighty kingdoms were frantically buying up, confiscating, and hoarding every single available ounce of raw metal, from iron and tin to copper, for the sole purpose of casting muskets, firearms, and cannons for the endless resource wars tearing civilization apart, making life incredibly difficult for ordinary working people. In that dark, militarized context, the mere idea of a local castle baker owning a perfectly round, shiny, polished metal baking pan was completely unthinkable and absolutely absurd to everyone in the village. Metal was so astronomically expensive and scarce that buying a simple pie pan was equivalent to owning a massive, life-changing fortune in modern times, leaving bakers with very few options for their craft. Because of this metal famine, people were forced to bake their family pies in heavy dishes, thick earthenware dishes that absorbed heat poorly, or directly on the rough stone hearth of brick ovens. On one incredibly high-pressure afternoon inside that castle, the wife of the head baker was tasked with making a giant traditional British apple pie to serve a gathering of wealthy, powerful nobles who were visiting the estate, expecting a magnificent feast that perfectly matched their high aristocratic status. Inside that terrifying moment, on the very brink of personal disaster, the baker's wife pulled off a spectacular deception. She hurriedly scooped up all the leftover angular scraps of dough covered in table dust and flour. She kneaded them together frantically into a chaotic mass and rolled them flat into a single sheet. She dumped the entire rescued sticky apple filling right into the geometric center with a swift motion. She folded the dough completely in half, like closing a thick leather wallet to hide her crime. Her bare hands roughly crimped and pinched the edges together, creating a misshapen, blistered, asymmetrical arc. She threw it straight into the roaring red-hot stone oven, silently praying to the heavens for safety. When the pastry was finally pulled out of the hot oven, it did not look elegant or noble. It looked like a deformed, rugged lump of dough, a sharp crescent moon standing defiantly right there. However, when the wealthy nobles took their very first bite, an absolute culinary miracle occurred right away. Because the pastry was not trapped inside a thick ceramic dish, the outer crust puffed up perfectly. The sweet apple juice inside did not evaporate freely, but concentrated itself into a rich, dark sauce. Even more surprising and revolutionary was that enjoying this food completely freed them from tedious etiquette. They didn't need expensive porcelain plates, silver knives, or fine forks to eat their delicious meal. They could use their bare, unwashed hands to hold that folded dough directly and eat it casually. That terrified woman did not just successfully hide a temporary mistake, she accidentally laid a solid foundation. She created the world's very first self-contained portable food structure, permanently altering the historical trajectory of dining. Decades later, when the very first waves of European colonists packed their meager bags for the voyage, they boarded rickety, rotting wooden ships to cross the vast, dangerous Atlantic Ocean toward the New World. They brought this chaotic folded pastry recipe along as ideal survival baggage for their unpredictable journey ahead. They naively thought that the pristine, fertile new land would easily provide all the necessary ingredients. However, the exact moment they set foot on the harsh American shore, they realized their massive mistake. The entire North American continent at that time was totally devoid of any sweet, edible apples. The only native apples that existed in the dense forests were wild crab apples, tiny, rock-hard fruit. It was a true, undisputed nightmare for the human taste buds, completely shocking everyone who tried them. Its natural flavor was a horrific, stomach-churning combination of fibrous, dry astringency and sharp sourness. It tasted exactly like car battery acid mixed with concentrated chemical vinegar, ruining any traditional baking plans. If you deliberately attempted to make a traditional turnover with these wild crab apples, your mouth puckered tight. Your eyes would feel like they were rolling back into your skull from absolute flavor shock. You would fall into a state of total paralyzed silence from the terrible, incredibly intense flavor experience. Refusing to submit to these hostile natural circumstances, the early American settlers transformed their agricultural methods. They absolutely refused to live a life in a new world completely devoid of any rich sweetness. They began ordering expensive, delicate cuttings of sweet, domesticated apple varieties directly from the European homeland. They shipped them carefully across the stormy ocean and threw themselves into a massive grafting campaign. They meticulously grafted these noble, civilized branches onto the gnarled, bitter, deeply rooted stumps of trees. They operated exactly like mad scientists in early science fiction novels, altering nature to fit their desires. Generations passed by, through so much physical sweat, heartbreak, and tears of failed experimentation everywhere. Finally, the long rows of trees yielded to human will, producing large, round, sweet, juicy apples. At this historic point, the apple turnover rose to become a grand living symbol of adaptation. It represented the stubborn human will to survive and successfully conquer a completely new wild territory. By the 19th century, during the absolute peak of the American Industrial Revolution, this pastry found success. It found its ultimate, supreme place in the dark hearts of the country's bustling industrial zones. Exhausted working-class men had to endure grueling 14-hour shifts down in dark, suffocating coal mines daily. They labored in highly hazardous iron and steel foundries where a single mistake meant instant death. These working-class men did not have the luxury, privilege, or physical space to sit down comfortably. They could not enjoy a traditional slice of delicate pie with a fine plate and utensils. Confidently, the folded turnover was the absolute perfect answer to the ruthless practicality of that industrial era. Energetically, a weary miner with bare hands covered in toxic black, greasy coal dust could grip the pastry. He could casually, safely bite into the clean, sweet, hot apple filling protected by the crust. After finishing his quick, hunger-saving lunch, the worker simply tossed the dirty edge onto the ground. It was, in historical reality, the working class's very first disposable, biodegradable, highly functional lunchbox. It served as an ingenious survival solution against the fierce, crushing gears of modern machinery everywhere. The massive success of such an excellent functional design always triggers copying from various rival cultures. The elite French culinary establishment looked across the channel at the rough, asymmetrical, sloppy pastry. They immediately turned up their noses in aristocratic contempt, judging it completely unfit for society banquets. They loudly believed that the British structure was far too crude, completely lacking any necessary refinement. They decided to heavily upgrade the concept by using a complex, difficult puff pastry method instead. They used hundreds of micro layers of chilled, paper-thin butter stacked together to envelop a fragrant apple filling. They carefully wrapped the highly caramelized apple filling and named it with a very noble phrase. When translated literally into common vulgar language, the elegant French name actually means an apple slipper. This hilarious cultural contradiction shows that even the most artistic minds have highly bizarre naming habits. They name things in ways that make regular people laugh out loud when imagining common footwear. Meanwhile, the Germans approached the exact same pastry problem with characteristic engineering seriousness and rigid discipline. They argued that the French arc design lacked mechanical stability during long-distance military transport projects. They believed it was far too vulnerable to crushing inside the heavy packed bags of active personnel. Therefore, German culinary engineers gave birth to a sturdier, much thicker, square-shaped, balanced pastry structure. The ultimate, singular purpose of this structural change was for the pastry to survive completely intact, always. It had to endure inside the heavy, rough canvas backpacks of infantry soldiers during long marches. It survived across treacherous mountain ranges without turning into a mushy, ruined, unappetizing mess of juice. When this specific thread of an idea spread down to warm lands of America, it changed. It shed its sweet, sugary coat entirely to transform into the savory empanada popular across the region. It was stuffed with heavily seasoned meat sautéed with native spices and onions, deep-fried in lard. Moving even further across the globe to South Asia, that exact same folded dough structure combined. It blended perfectly with spiced mashed potatoes, aromatic herbs, and hot green chilies for crispy samosas. No matter the latitude or the culture, basic human instinct always aligns perfectly when creating food. You just wrap whatever leftover food you have in a warm blanket of carbohydrates and bake. You fry or bake the pastry until it reaches perfect, beautiful golden crispiness for everyone to enjoy. But here is the absolute peak of historical irony, a massive, brilliant plot twist for us. This sudden revelation turns National Apple Turnover Day into an outstanding, real-world comedy piece for everyone. Here we have a specific food tied to global human obsession for centuries across multiple continents. It represents a massive modern industry bringing in millions of dollars in corporate revenue each single year. It is an official holiday clearly recorded on civil calendars across the entire North American continent. Yet, if you take the immense trouble to flip through official federal archives, you find nothing. You can access the Digital Library of Congress database or scour presidential executive orders in vain. If you search to find the true identity of the person who signed the decree, nothing. You will come up with a big, fat, absolute zero regarding the true origin of day. The original founder of this holiday is completely, totally anonymous to historians and citizens alike now. There is no executive order signed by George Washington, nor pamphlet penned by Benjamin Franklin. There is absolutely no corporate paper trail from international pastry conglomerates or processed food monopolies anywhere. The man or woman who gifted America this specific holiday vanished completely from the face of Earth. They left without leaving a single trace, signature, or useful clue for future generations to discover. Faced with this mysterious total disappearance, a completely serious and highly plausible historical theory emerges. It is very likely that National Apple Turnover Day was actually created from a secret, desperate campaign. It was started by a loose, unrecorded coalition of completely exhausted dishwashers working in American restaurants. Let us analyze this specific timeline as logically and realistically as possible for our viewers right now. July 4th is always, without exception, the biggest, busiest holiday of the year for the food industry. Massive outdoor barbecues, family gatherings, and giant pie-eating contests run non-stop from dawn until midnight everywhere. The inevitable result of all this chaotic celebration occurs on the morning of July 5th without fail. Every single kitchen sink across this massive country falls into a state of severe, catastrophic overload. Sinks are buried under literal mountains of heavy plates caked in hardened beef grease and fat. They are covered with ceramic baking pans encrusted with burnt, blackened sugar and thousands of forks. The miserable, underpaid dishwashers of America probably stood looking at that ceramic war ruin that morning. They were sighing heavily from the bottom of their souls, feeling completely overwhelmed by the task ahead. They told themselves that if they had to scrub one more pie pan today, they would quit. They would immediately burn down the kitchen and go on a massive strike against the owners. So, to save their own lives and sanity, they fabricated a national holiday dedicated exclusively to pastries. They chose a snack that requires absolutely no plates, no forks, leaving nothing behind to clean. You just grab it with your bare hands, shove it directly into your face, and eat it. You wolf it down quickly and casually walk away without creating any mess for the kitchen staff. It was, in essence, a masterpiece of anti-dishwashing propaganda, perfectly camouflaged under a beautiful, sweet guise. Whether its true historical origin was a clever labor strike or marketing stunt, it successfully succeeded. The modern versions of turnovers you find today have completely exceeded all limits of sanity and health. You no longer get the chance to easily enjoy a traditional, elegant, simple apple turnover anywhere. If you step up to a trendy urban food truck or fast food drive-through lane tomorrow morning, they will immediately assault your palate with true culinary monsters that defy traditional baking logic and rules. It could be salted caramel turnovers deep-fried in grease until the outer crust blisters like skin. You might see giant blocks of dough smothered in suffocating, overly sweet white chocolate sauce and sugar. Even worse, they offer terrifying variations stuffed tight with sticky raisins, which ruins the texture completely. This is something the American Dental Association always warns is a direct, immediate hazard to enamel. Some of these modern commercial pastries contain so much heavy grease you could use them as lubricant. You could easily lubricate the entire transmission engine of a heavy-duty semi-truck with just one pastry. This is accompanied by a refined sugar content strong enough to make any professional fitness expert faint. Any certified nutritionist or health coach would experience pure sugar shock just by looking at the label. The bizarre transition from the solemn, heroic, flag-waving nature of Independence Day is truly unique, turning into a national festival celebrating pure laziness and historical kitchen mistakes is uniquely American at core. This is the exact witty, charming way American culture operates at its center throughout modern history. They can stand solemnly under the flag the very night before, honoring their historical triumphs and victories. But the very next morning, they are completely ready to self-deprecate and laugh at themselves easily. They will gladly enjoy a greasy, sugary turnover while completely forgetting the solemnity of previous night. I have completely exposed the entire naked, chaotic truth behind this July 5th holiday for you. We took a long journey through time and space, from moments of panic to coal mines. My mission to transmit this deep, highly unusual historical knowledge ends here for today, my friends. Now, I want to hear your unique voices echo loudly in the comments section down below. Tell me frankly, right now, are you a strict traditionalist when it comes to your desserts? Do you believe fruit only has value when neatly arranged inside a noble round pie pan? Or are you a rebellious soul who loves total chaos, prioritizing convenient folded pouches of dough? Do not hesitate to leave your thoughts and expose the most horrific baking accidents you caused. And let me know if you plan to celebrate today by turning your own kitchen into a battlefield of flour and apple juice.